how to start picking out your own investments, and is it ever good enough? Enjoy. Welcome to the Age of Jeremy. My name is Jeremy Quintanilla. You might remember me from such businesses as 3T Warrior Academy, Blockheads, the smartest way to track your crypto. Actually, Blockheads created Merlin, the smartest way to track your crypto. Q Financial, Freedom Insurance, and one of my all-time favorites, because I love making content, Age of Radio. And if you're around this weekend and you have a podcast and you're interested in learning how to grow your podcast with a network, with the proven strategies that we use to distribute, grow, and monetize your podcast, join me on a webinar. There's going to be a link in the episode description. It's actually in my link tree. So find my link tree, click on that, and you too can join our amazing webinar where I'll talk to you about the benefits of joining the hundreds of podcasts that are part of the Age of Radio Podcast Network. Make sure that you follow me on Instagram. Make sure that you join my Dope Insights and Broadcast channel as well. And follow us on Age of Radio, specifically Instagram at Age of Radioverse. We have so much fun stuff on that Instagram feed, along with a lot of the clips from the shows themselves. So I'm really, really excited about where we are headed with Age of Radio. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk with you about how to find and vet companies to get started with investing. The reason why is because one of the problems that I have seen over the years of coaching people is most people want an advisor, which is okay, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But a lot of people want an advisor so that they don't have to do the legwork of what to invest. The problem is that the advisor's not you, and they're only going to do the best assessment that they can based on their complete understanding of you as a person. And you as a person can probably do a better job at deciding on what you should invest in and what your risk tolerance is. And if you can learn to do the research, you would probably be able to do a better job than the financial advisors that are out there. Did you know that about 58% of the US adults own stock? Most of them hold it through mutual funds, index funds, or their employer retirement plans like a 401k. But here's the kicker. Stock ownership is incredibly unequal. The wealthiest 1% of Americans own about 50% of all stocks, while the bottom 50% own just a tiny 1% of the market. Why is this a problem? Because historically, the stock market has returned an average of around 10% annually over the long haul. By staying on the sidelines, nearly half of the country is leaving one of the greatest wealth building engines in human history completely on the table. And this is just in the stock market. If you take cryptocurrency projects into place and have an exit plan, you could make a lot of money even investing in something as volatile as the crypto market. The stock market looks like a confusing maze of charts, numbers, flashing numbers, acronyms, more flashing numbers, some Excel spreadsheets, some information that you have to read, and that can be daunting. And I coach with people on a regular basis in our 3T Warrior Academy where that's the biggest question. How do you actually figure out how to start investing? And I've been thinking a lot about this because, if there is a clear and guided process path of what you can do to get better at looking up stocks and vetting companies, you too could become a very successful investor. As the legendary investor Warren Buffett once said, you don't need to do extraordinary things to achieve extraordinary results. You just need a simple, consistent, and logical framework to get started. Now, before you invest a single dollar, you need to decide which path fits your personality, your schedule, and your interest level. So think of the difference between driving a souped-up Lamborghini sports car or hopping onto a high-speed train. Now, there is a path that I do want to make people aware of. There are robo-advisors that you can get. If you want to build wealth but have zero interest in reading financial reports or following business news, I would say that try and test out a robo-advisor, even over a traditional financial advisor, just so you can get your feet wet. I've never used a robo-advisor, but as I was prepping this article, this was something that I actually was like, oh, I should really test this out and see what robo-advisors exist. And not only from the robo-advising perspective, but maybe even look into how to set up different trading bots. Because again, the only way to get your feet wet in that, I guess, in any game is to, I guess, do the game. I don't know where the feet wet kind of came into that. But again, a robo-advisor can build a diversified portfolio of low-cost index funds for you based on your age, goals, and risk tolerance. Now, I'm going to talk specifically probably about appreciation assets, not go too heavily into dividends here, but these can apply for how to find good stocks and then also to look into how those stocks pay dividends. And I can work on kind of educating people from this podcast a little better in that regard here in the future. But the key here is that when we look at this, or when you're listening to this, I want you to take it from the perspective of this is mainly going to be touching on buying stocks, investing for the long term. So there will probably be a lot of things about ETFs and index funds that I mentioned or that I will refer to as we dive deep into this. And so with a diversified portfolio of low-cost index funds, the robo-advisor will look at your age, your goals, and your risk tolerance. And what it'll do is it'll automate your monthly contributions, and then the software handles the rest. So it's simple, it's efficient, and more importantly, it automates your monthly contributions. I'm going to say that again. It automates your monthly contributions. So when you automate something and you dollar cost average in, because this would be the same thing as dollar cost averaging in, that's when you are in the realm of what Warren Buffett said, where it's simple and consistent. This makes it super simple and super consistent. Now, the second path is the path that I want to bring everybody up to speed on, and the DIY approach. In fact, I've been thinking a lot about a lot of things that I've said in the past, a lot of the things that I do in the past. In fact, one of the things, I'll just be transparent with you, I'm wealthier now, obviously, and I'm on the trajectory to be largely wealthy in the hundreds of millions of dollars range and into the billions of dollars of range. And there were two things that happened to me, and I feel that I adjusted them. One, we were at a pool in Las Vegas during the XRP Las Vegas event. We brought the team there. We went in a pool, and there was a woman who started bothering us in the pool. She seemed to be drunk, and she had heard that we were in the cabana, right? And so she started judging us on the fact that, she made a comment, something along the lines like, oh, you're those type of people, referencing your wealthy people, or in some regard where you can afford a cabana. And in all honesty, the cabana is really not super that expensive. It's just the food and stuff that you buy from there, and then you get alcohol, and the dollars just kind of add up. But the point is that, and she made that comment, and in my mind, I almost said something to the extent that like maybe she could never afford it, or something to like make fun of her being poor, something along those lines. And I didn't say that, but I didn't feel good specifically about thinking it. And then she ended up bothering us, and she kept bothering James. She flipped James over off of James is one of the software developers that we have, and flipped James over off of his floaty that he was on. And I essentially asked her to leave us alone, and yada, yada, yada. The point is I didn't feel good about that. And I didn't feel good about how I was starting to think about money. And then I also bought a Louis Vuitton bracelet, which I do like Louis Vuitton stuff. I'll still buy Louis Vuitton bags and trunks. And I bought the Louis Vuitton bracelet. I enjoyed wearing it. I like it a lot. And maybe one day I will get another one. But when I was starting to think about it, I started to think, because of the large amounts of money that were coming in over this last year and a half or 2 years, I didn't really want it to affect what my overall goal was. And my number one overall goals are being compassionate, being integral, leaving the world better than I found it, and growing the clan, growing the clan, building the clan, and protecting the clan. And I felt that those things didn't align with that, the way that I was feeling and the way that I was thinking about purchasing things. Not that purchasing those things are bad, and like I said, I may get those things in the future. But what I did was I ended up doing a ritual with the bracelet, and I ended up giving it over to the Buddha at a stupa. And I feel that when I did that, it relinquished myself of that need to have items that were above and beyond what was necessary for the goal of what I was trying to accomplish. So for example, if you need to have dress shoes, you need to have $3,000 dress shoes. No, you can you can get by on $100 or $200 dress shoes, or probably $120, $200, $300, rather than having to buy like $1,500 dress shoes. And that money can go to giving, and that money can go back to the religions or your spiritual practices. That money can go into books. That money can go into knowledge. That money can go back to the people. That money can go to paying your friends to help you do some stuff. And in my heart, that's the actual individual that I want to be, and that's the person that I want to be when I become the governor of Arizona. Not the person that felt some type of righteousness or some type of way around having a large amount of wealth and on the trajectory to have even larger amounts of wealth. I don't want that. I'm not saying that I need to be the millionaire next door type where it's frugal, but in your heart, you can't act that way. And ever since then, I've taken an approach to doing things myself. And that's really taken over what I want to educate and teach people on, is teaching them how to do things themselves, right? We've started doing planting. We are starting to hopefully grow our own food soon. Eventually we'll have a homestead. That's the type of person that I want to be. I'm a communist, no matter how I like it through and through. Depending on what you think of a communist or what you think of people, that's who I am. And that is a DIY nature. And that's what punk rock has always been, is about doing things yourself and being able to do things yourself and not having to hire people to do them for you when you can do it, because it makes you much better individual. So if you can do them, you should. If you can't, then I don't think that there's a problem with getting that help. But I think that there's something to be said for men who actually know how to do the things in the world that we have lost due to the technology that we have. So I hope that as you're listening to this, you want to research companies and understand how businesses make money and try to build your own personal portfolio. If you choose to do a DIY path, you have to realize that it requires a real time commitment. You can't just buy a stock because a neighbor told you that it's a hot tip. That's not investing. That's just essentially gambling. So to succeed, we need a balance of two distinct methods here. You need fundamental analysis, and traditionally you'll need technical analysis. The best book on the best book on fundamental analysis is Benjamin Graham's The Intelligent Investor. And I'm looking up some other ones that I'm going to start reading here, and Technical Analysis for Dummies to get you started on TA. But let's break down fundamental analysis. So fundamental analysis is the one that I like the most. You're looking at I take that back. The fundamental analysis is the one because I feel like it takes less time, because it takes a lot of reading and looking and analyzing, but not to the same amount of analysis that you do with technical analysis. Okay. And so with fundamental analysis, you're looking at their revenues, their profits, their management, and their overall business health to find the company's intrinsic value, what it's actually probably worth in the real world. So for example, when Tesla went out on the marketplace worth $1 trillion, in my mind, based off of what I knew little about SpaceX, my guess is it was probably only worth about 600 million, 700 million. And that seems to be more of an adequate assessment of what the price of that specific company is worth. And that's by understanding what was showing through on I can't remember the document that comes out when they do when they're going to go public, but there's a document that comes out that outlines the entire company. And technical analysis, on the other hand, is about the stock price. It looks at price charts and trading volumes to spot trends and figure out exactly the right time to buy or sell. So you can think of it like buying a house. So fundamental analysis is checking the foundation, the roof, the neighborhood, and the plumbing to see what the house is actually worth. Technical analysis is like watching the local real estate market to see if prices are currently trending up or down so you don't overpay today. So you find the companies that you want to invest in, and then you use technical analysis to find the right time to go in and buy them. And then you decide to either sell them based off the technical analysis or you hold them for the long term. And that brings us to the core concept of looking at investments. And it's a visual I want you to keep in your mind. Imagine a classic balance scale. Okay, I'm a Libra, the little scales. Okay, a balance scale. On one side of the scales, you have the price. On the other side, you actually have the value of the company. That's what you have to keep in mind when you're thinking about this. Price is simply what the stock market is charging you for a share today. Value is actually what the business is worth. So for me, when I think of, say, Google, I think that the value of it's much higher than what the stock price has baked into it because of my assessment of what it's going to be inside of the future. And the secret to successful investing is finding situations where that scale is out of balance. So where the price is lower than the actual value. In the investing world, we call this the margin of safety. So it means buying a stock for 50 cents on the dollar. If you buy a stock that is trading significantly below its true value, you give yourself a massive buffer against market volatility and mistakes. So how do we measure this? Now, we look at this. So what is the tape measure of the stock valuation? It's a metric that you've probably heard of. It's a price to earnings ratio or a P to E ratio. So the math is super simple. P to E ratio is essentially it is the market price per share. Okay, so the per share of the stock divided by the earnings per share. So imagine there's a local pizza shop. I love pizza. We'll use pizza as an example. We'll call it Jeremy's Pizza because my name's Jeremy. If you want to buy one share of Jeremy's Pizza, let's say it costs you $20. Now we look at the shop's books and find that for every share, the pizza shop earns $2 in net profit. Okay, so for every share, it was $2 in net profit last year. The $2 is the earnings per share or the EPS. Okay, so it costs $20 for a share of pizza. And last year, the net profit was $2, which is the earnings per share. It's the $2 earnings per share. That's the EPS. To find the price to earnings ratio, we divide the price by the earnings. So if we take the the 20, which is the cost, which is 20, divided by the earnings per share is 2, we get a 10. So what does that 10 actually mean? It means that you are paying $10 for every dollar of profit the business makes. So a share of pizza costs 20, the earnings per share was 2. You take the 20, divide it by the 2, you got 10, okay? The 10 means that for every dollar of profit the business makes, you are paying $10 for every $1 of the profit the business makes. If the PE ratio of Jeremy's Pizza was 30, you would be paying $30 for every $1 profit. Generally speaking, a high P to E ratio means that the market expects huge growth in the future. So people are willing to pay a premium today. A low P to E ratio can mean the stock is undervalued or that the company has limited growth prospects. So if you find a low price to earnings ratio on a company that you look and do the analysis on and think that it's going to blow its revenues and its growth out of the market, or it's going to enter into a new field like Brady's is on the path to buy PSS, the PSS division of Honeywell, as they're increasing their infrastructure of the logistics into Brady's and becoming a really large logistics end-to-end from shipping through the entire technology piece of it. If that price to earnings is low right now, and we know that information is out there, and we think that that's going to be beneficial in the future, you would go and buy Brady stock because that means that it's undervalued for where its trajectory is going. Okay. But here's a crucial rule. You never compare PE ratios across different industries. So a technology company like Apple or Google is naturally going to have a much higher price to earnings ratio because their business can scale incredibly fast. A utility company that provides electricity to your neighborhood is going to have a much lower P to E ratio because their growth is steady but slow. So always compare a company's P to E, price to earnings ratio, to its direct competitors or its industry average. Okay, if you want to take it a step further, you could start researching a PEG ratio, and this stands for price to earnings to growth. It takes the PE ratio and then divides it by the company's earnings growth rate. So a general rule of thumb is a PEG ratio below 1 often signals that a stock is undervalued relative to its growth potential. It's like finding a high growth stock on the clearance rack. So some of the things that you can go do is you can go into stockanalysis.com, you can go to Yahoo Finance, you could invest in other things that give you access to the technicals of a stock, and you can go to find the price to earnings ratio, right? You can go find the price to earnings to growth ratio, and if those are below 1 and the PEG ratio is below 1, the price to earnings ratio will be lower, or their earnings to growth will be really high. But if that's below 1, those could be some stocks that you want to look at to see what their long-term trajectory is and maybe add them into your specific portfolio. Okay, so how do you find and vet some of these companies? That's the next thing that we want to think about. Okay. Now you might be asking me, that's great, but how do I actually find these stocks? Because that's one of the things. There's tons of fucking stocks out there. Excuse my language, but there's tons of them. And hopefully there's more. And the more that we have a market of publicly traded companies, the better. And again, you might be thinking, well, Jeremy, didn't you just mention earlier you were a communist? That's probably true. Well, that is true because I did. The point is that if publicly traded companies are owned by all the people inside of the publicly traded company, along with the shareholders, it is no longer technically a capitalistic company. It's considered what we like to call democracy in the workplace, or it could be like a communist style company. And that's more of what I'm a fan of. And I would prefer that we go that route. There are lots of problems with that, and there's lots of benefits to that, which I'm not going to go into here. But if you want to understand more about that, go check out Democracy in the Workplace. It's an organization, a nonprofit that maybe you could find that you want to be involved with. Now, how do you vet and find these companies? So you can't manually scroll through thousands of tickers. Instead, you use a tool called the stock screener. So think of a stock screener like an online dating app filter for stocks. Instead of looking at every stock in the world, you put in your criteria. For example, you can tell the screener, show me stocks with a PE ratio under 20, a PEG ratio under 1, and steady positive earnings growth. Boom, you're going to find a bunch of stocks. If you wanted to take that a step farther and add in a dividend portfolio piece to it, you could be like, and add in a company that's had continuous dividend growth. That would be amazing. And the stock screener goes and finds some of these companies. Suddenly, the market narrows down from 10,000 stocks to a highly focused watch list of 20 or 30 companies that match your exact strategy. So you're going to need to get a stock screener. I currently, like I said, I haven't in the past. And the reason why I decided to make this episode is so that I could share it with you, and then it could push me to do more of these things so that we can educate people in our academy and in other places on how to find these specific investments. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to write or utilize Gemini Notebook to help write this episode. Okay. So again, now you have 20 or 30 companies. Now, if you're looking for a good screener to start, here's some recommendations. There's Investorian. Okay, that's one. This is a highly recommended for beginners. It is incredibly clean, visual, and has a feature called Broker Sync. Okay, if you have TradingView, there are ways to access screeners inside of TradingView. Yahoo Finance, a classic, free, and familiar option. It's great for beginners because it combines screening filters with real-time news, portfolios, and watch lists. There's a Fidelity. I'm sure there's one in Charles Schwab that I don't know about. You're just going to want to research and try to find some of these stock screeners. A stock screener, you think about it, one of the things that we confuse about investing and buying shares of stock is when a company becomes public, or a company in general works like selling anything. The product of the company from an investment standpoint is the share of the actual company or the membership interest in the company. We have a tendency to convolute this because we think it's some great big thing that a company exists, when all that it is all that you're buying is a piece of that specific company. And you could think of that as going and trying to find shoes. Think of a stock screener, something that's going to find you the best pair of shoes based off of the criteria that you put in, and then you buy shoes. And then if you were a shoe seller, you would buy shoes at wholesale and then you would sell them. That's kind of like what we're doing here as an investment. That's specifically more like a broker. But the point is that when we think about buying these things, we are buying something that we are then going to keep or we are going to sell, just like anything else that we have in our house. Okay. But the things in our house, they lose value over time, or hopefully, and some things in your house might go increase in value over time. But again, the whole idea is that that's what makes something an investment, is if it's going to go up or it's going to go down. So try to not think of buying these stocks as some mystical thing. You're just buying something that could go up or down. And that is a marketplace that we have specifically created. Once you have a short list, okay, so you find the things that you want to go and research, you need to perform some quick due diligence. And the best place to do that is a document called the Form 10K. Okay. The 10K is a comprehensive annual report that public companies are legally required to file with the SEC. You don't have to read all 200 pages. If you do, kudos to you, and I recommend that you do, but you don't have to. As a beginner, just open up the 10K and look at 3 specific sections. The first section is the business. This is a plain English description of what the company actually does, what products they sell, who their competitors are, and how they make their money. If you don't understand item 1, don't buy the stock. Stick to the businesses you understand. That's why I keep trying to tell people, buy the things that you enjoy. I buy most of the things that I enjoy. Now, the other thing, which we mentioned ETFs and stocks at the beginning. So this will be specifically for companies. I'll work hopefully on something that dives more into that, but let's keep going. Item 1A is risk factors. This is where the company is legally forced to list everything that could possibly go wrong. They list them in order of importance. Read this to understand the worst case scenario before you invest. And item 7, management discussion and analysis. This is where the CEO and the management team tell their story in their own words, and they discuss the financial results, liquidity, and future trends of the business. If you read those 3 things and you're like, man, I think this is a badass freaking business, and it met all those other things that you put into the screener, go and freaking buy this stock and hold on to it and see what happens, and hold it for a quarter or 6 months and then reevaluate. Now, there's this saying that happens in the world called don't invest. That's don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Okay. I think that's ridiculous. You should carry your eggs in multiple different things, because inside, if you had 9 baskets for 9 eggs, that would be ridiculous. So I'm going to try to say that you need to diversify, but I'm going to work hard in my entire life never to say don't put all of your eggs in one basket, because you should put all of your eggs in one basket. It makes much more sense to carry the freaking eggs. After you find your great company, you understand their business and the valuation looks fantastic. How do you actually pull the trigger and manage that risk? There are 2 golden, unbreakable rules of investing that you must follow. Rule number 1, diversify, diversify, diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. I said it. The text tricked me. In investing, this is a law. When building your portfolio, you want to make sure you are spreading your money across different companies, industries, and size of businesses. A great rule of thumb to avoid concentration is try not to let any single stock make up more than 5% of your total portfolio. That way, if one company hits a major roadblock or suffers a massive downturn, the other 90% of your portfolio is there to keep you steady. Rule number 2 is dollar cost average. That's why I like the idea of the robo-advisor. When people get started, they often ask me, I have $1,000 saved up. Should I invest all of it today or wait till the market drops? You should not do either of those things. Historically, putting all of your money at once, called lump sum investing, performs slightly better or average because the market trends upward over time. But lump sum investing carries a high risk of investor regret if you invest all $1,000 on Monday and the market drops 10%. So with dollar cost averaging, you practice putting in money at the same amount over the same period of time. When the stock market is high, your $100 buys you fewer shares if you're putting in $100 a month. When the stock market is low, your 100 automatically buys you more shares. And what's great about this with fractional investing, like I do with Schwab, if I want to buy Coca-Cola and it's $50 and I want to throw $20 at it, you can just go and throw $20 at it. I won't get into how they make their money when they do that, but they do, and it's great, and they don't take it from us specifically, and that's what I like about it the most, and you should start investing, and I recommend that you invest with Charles Schwab, and by invest with Charles Schwab, I mean use their amazing products. Getting started as an investor does not require you to be a math genius. I hardly used any math. In fact, as long as you understand what the PE and PEG ratios are, and you can get them in a stock screener and find some stuff, you don't have to do any math. Okay. And so the first thing you need to decide is if you want to do a robo advisor. I would ditch a financial advisor. I think financial advisors need to go to flat fees and they need to become more educators, and they need to become educators in the space of teaching people how to do things. Unless it comes to very, very wealthy people that are giving them lots of money, like hedge fund managers, or, high end advising management. Other than that, I think if you're a normal person that's making anywhere from zero to, I don't know, $500,000 a year, you can do your own investing. Even at $1 million a year, I think you should just do your own investing. That's my personal opinion. I think people think that because they know something that might make them always better at what they're doing, right? Anybody can learn how to do this and anybody can invest, and everybody should invest. These are the things that they need to teach on a regular basis to everybody so they can go and make these assessments. And then if you use this along with our capital DR strategy, that's even better. So then what you do is you use screeners. Well, you find out if you're going to do DIY, let's say you are. Look for high quality companies trading at reasonable PE and PEG ratios. Use screeners, okay, to find companies to look at. Do some research on the 10K, and then start dollar cost averaging into what it is that you want to invest in. If you start doing that right now and then start educating yourself, you can set yourself up to create generational wealth over time. Finance and personal finance should be a part of everybody's learning, everybody's education at a very basic level. And not only just the education of them understanding this. The thing about investing is you get better the more that you do it. And the only way to do it is take the risk with the money. So it's kind of like gambling, right? Gamblers are supposed to have like this book that they write all of their winnings and losses in. So it kind of keeps them in control of what they're doing. You want to only have money set aside for investing, not get crazy with it, not go under crazy with it. Keep track of what your winnings and losings are, and make good assessments and decisions with it. And you keep doing that, and you keep doing that, and you keep doing that. And after 5 or 6, 7 years, you'll be making really good money with investing. And I'm not going to say that this is going to make you a billionaire overnight, but if you start right now and you're in your mid-20s, your 30s, your 40s, you will have millions of dollars by the time you retire if you start now and start investing. We'll be right back. This is going to be a long episode today, folks. Long episode. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to talk about that is it's been weighing heavy on my heart. I had mentioned the reason why it's been weighing heavy on my heart is I used to be thinking that I have a landscaper, but there's this notion that wealthy people out there do, that wealthy people out there, they buy people to do all of their services. And that's partially true for the fact that it frees up the time, because most wealthy people work a lot. Like I work 50, 60 hours a week. And I'm trying to get it between like 45 and 51. But the point is that I want to be able to do things that we've lost as a society. Like we don't forge anymore. I don't know why I would need to forge right now. Basket making, growing your own food, cooking at home. I just recently started trying to cook at home. We had bulgogi on the grill. It was amazing. Best thing I've ever had in my life. Fantastic. Actually, I take that back. Chilaquiles by Maria, my partner, is the best thing on the planet. And bulgogi is probably pretty second to close for food for me. But when we find passion, when we find comfort in our home and being in our home and working with our hands and doing things, I think that brings us closer to Godhood. And that was the reason why this is so heavy on my heart, is because I think that we relinquish some of the most important things to others, and we relinquish our souls of being an actual human and doing things with our hands, that we've given up, and that's allowed us to lose our way. And I don't mean lose our way in the sense of like finding Jesus and shit. I mean lose our way from nature and who we are as part of Earth and as a part of what we should be doing, and we're getting too far away from Mother Earth, in sounding like a new age person. But the point is, let's get back on track here. The point is, I was thinking about that, so I wanted to get that off my chest about what to do, and I feel that is more of what one of my purposes is in life, is to help educate people so that they can make smart investment decisions and do that research. And education is always going to be a part of my life. I come from a long line of educators. And as I spend time with the Buddha and with meditation, that seems to be even more clear as I move forward. And I'm excited to see what's moving forward with 3T Warrior Academy and my life and education and what I'm doing. Point is, let's get back to the next thing, which is the feedback loop. Okay, so we're going to dive into a little bit about a topic that I face a lot and a topic that irks me, which is feedback. And it irks me for different reasons. There's some really good things about feedback, and there's some things that frustrate the fuck with me about feedback, and I'm going to talk about them. So feedback is a really fascinating thing on one hand. It's negative. It can be negative. It can be constructive. Feedback is very basic. Fundamental human need in any professional setting is specifically needed. It is the primary engine of growth and improvement. And for leaders, feedback is absolute necessary. If you're truly going to develop as a leader, you simply cannot do it without getting great feedback. You need to hear the truth about your leadership, not just what you want to hear. And it's the only way you can really grow over the long haul in anything that you do. It is the bedrock of self-awareness. And as I always say on the show, the self-aware leader is a growing leader, and growing leaders are the best leaders. To be honest with you, I don't know if I've ever said this on the show, but we're going to start saying that on the show, that self-aware leader is a growing leader, and that growing leaders are the best leaders. But let's be honest for a second. We do crave positive feedback. So we want to hear that we're doing really, really well. And a lot of the times when we're in an environment, a constructive setting, sometimes people say that we do good stuff, and it could be fodder because it's doing a good thing and then giving the feedback thing. Okay. And when we get constructive or negative feedback instead, those things can specifically sting, and it can feel fucking horrible. So how can you navigate this? And why is it that something so essential for our growth can simultaneously feel so incredibly difficult to swallow? And that's what I'm going to talk about. So let's start at the immediate reaction we have when someone hands us feedback that isn't glowing praise. Our natural instinct is to put up a shield, so we get defensive. That happens to me all the time. Even when someone's not really giving me feedback, sometimes I get defensive over the dumbest shit. But to handle feedback like a pro, you have to understand the difference between feeling defensive and acting defensive. So I feel defensive. Sometimes I act defensive, but a lot of the time I feel defensive, but I choose not to act on it. Feeling defensive is a set of emotions. When someone criticizes your proposal or your performance, your brain perceives it as an attack. You instantly feel a rush of anger, anxiety, or maybe a bit of shame. But the truth is, the emotional reaction is completely normal, mostly inevitable, and you don't have direct control over it. You can get better control over it by meditating, and that's what helps me control that and lowering my sense of feeling defensive and lowering my defensive as an action. But whether you're an entry-level employee or you're an HR executive with decades of training, you will feel defensive sometimes, because who wants to be told that they're doing shitty, essentially? But acting defensive is entirely different. This refers to the behaviors you choose next: making excuses, criticizing the other person's back, giving them the silent treatment, dropping a sarcastic comment. Unlike your emotions, you have 100% control over your behaviors. The key to utilizing feedback without getting defensive is a concept called emotional validation. When you receive tough feedback, instead of immediately lashing out or making excuses, do this. Take a deep breath. And validate the emotion. That's why meditation helps with us. Tell yourself, I don't like feeling anxious right now, but it's totally normal to feel this way. After a major flaw is pointed out in anything that you do, you might feel that way. So recognize that and then move on. By acknowledging the emotion, and this comes from meditation, Buddhist meditation, by acknowledging the emotion, you disarm the urge to specifically act out. Once you've validated your feelings, you can reframe the criticism. Don't see it as an attack, because most of the time people that are criticizing you or giving you feedback aren't actually criticizing you, or they're not doing it in a way to be harmful to you. Reframe it as an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to build better skills. What can this situation teach me about my work or about how others perceive me? After all, our self-perception is never as accurate as others' perceptions of us. I'm going to say that again. Our self-perception is never as accurate as others' perception of us. That's one of the biggest things that sets people back, is I think because we're thinking something about ourselves that other people are thinking that too. And the truth is that's usually not the specific case. And as a leader, if you want to build a culture of growth, you have to actively seek feedback out. Surround yourself people who share your mission, but are honest and aligned enough that they aren't intimidated to tell you the truth. And that's when leaders listen and everyone grows. But there's also a flip side to this that I want to talk about, because sometimes I think that people are just doing feedback to fucking give feedback, and that's when it drives me fucking crazy. Or they utilize it as a tool to criticize someone without the intention of making it better for the overall mission. Or the feedback is a response to a self-criticism that they have about themselves, and they push that back out on the other person. While feedback is a necessary tool, too much of a good thing can be fucking toxic, and that is the flip side of this. So imagine coming to work every single day only to be met with a relentless stream of critiques. Every task you complete, feedback. Every tiny mistake is highlighted, which is the problem with the way in which a lot of people and a lot of companies give feedback. And this can be a recipe for a very real condition called feedback fatigue. When the frequency of feedback becomes overwhelming, it transforms from a beneficial tool for growth into a heavy, demoralizing burden. And so how do you know if your team are suffering from feedback fatigue? There are some signs, and this is why we pay Harvard people and Yale people and Stanford people and PhD people to research, so we can figure this out, so we can take this information, so we can do better things with it, so that we can build better companies and a better government and a better world. So if there's loss of motivation, tasks that used to excite you now feel completely mundane and draining. If that's the case, it could be feedback fatigue. It could be just from doing the same thing over and over. Emotional overload. You feel like you are under constant suffocating scrutiny and start dreading every meeting. So if you are dreading a meeting with someone, normally it's because they are not listening to you, and or they are constantly giving you feedback, which essentially is them telling you everything that you've done wrong, when we look at how feedback over and over again can come out. Okay. Stress begins to manifest itself physically as headaches. It can manifest itself in sleep issues, and it can manifest itself as constant muscle tension. Okay. Those are physical symptoms from the situation that you're in that's causing you a bunch of stress. You can also have cynicism toward feedback, like I do. Eventually, your brain shuts down to protect itself. All feedback, even the most constructive advice, can just sound like background noise when you have this cynicism towards specific feedback. Now, I don't have real cynicism towards feedback. I think the way in which we give feedback in corporations and in businesses, and that people get and give, we look at it as a tool of honor, that we're giving feedback and that we're taking feedback. But what's really happening on the subconscious is the part that's tearing people apart. So when you lose motivation, you feel emotional overload, you don't want to do something, and you have cynicism towards people or things that are happening, that's when it might be time to speak up and say, hey, look, what's the real issue here? Or can we cool down on how often we're telling everybody that they're doing something wrong? Or more importantly, how often we need to tell somebody that they're doing something better. Okay, so we zoomed in, now I'll zoom back out. Okay, so if we look at the big picture of feedback fatigue, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's deeply connected to the culture that we live in. Okay, that's the culture that we live in. In fact, if you think about it, I have this thing where at the end of the day, I reassess what I did and did I move the needle forward. That's just me giving myself freaking feedback every day, right? Okay, so why are we so obsessed with constant evaluation, endless metrics, and perpetual self improvement? That's the problem that's arisen. Now, to answer this, there is a South Korean German philosopher by Byung-Chul Han. Okay, and I found about him on a great podcast called Philosophize. Nope, Philosophize. This is a show or a movie with Billy Crystal, I think. Not Billy Crystal. Is it Billy Crystal? I think it is Billy Crystal. But anyway, point is it's philosophy. Hold on, I'm going to look it up. Everyone calm down. Calm down. I'm looking it up right now. It is. Oh, it is called Philosophize This. Fantastic. And I think that the other show was called Analyze This, but I don't remember. Billy Crystal, I think, is in it. So I first heard about South Korean German philosopher Byung-Chul Han on Philosophize This. But he has a book called The Burnout Society, and he is a philosopher that I haven't fully read. I just heard about the Burnout Society on that podcast, and I wanted to introduce this inside of this podcast episode. Now, he argues that we have transitioned from what we call a disciplinary society to an achievement society. Okay, and this is key here because this goes back to my men being men thing. In the old days, the disciplinary society, we were controlled by external forces. Think of factories, prisons, and schools. A boss stood over the worker, enforcing rigid rules, and you worked your shift and then you went home. But today in our modern achievement society, we don't have a physical boss standing over us with a whip. Instead, we have internalized that boss. We are told that we are achievement projects, and we are driven by the endless pressure to perform, optimize, and self-improve. And that's one of the main reasons why we have moved so far away from doing things for ourselves, because we have created this achievement society where we say that when you're not working to make that money, you shouldn't be working to learn how to build the things around your house. You shouldn't be learning how to change your tires. You shouldn't be learning how to change your oil. You shouldn't be learning how to grow your food. You shouldn't be learning how to sew. You shouldn't be learning how to write cursive. You shouldn't be learning to do these things. You shouldn't be making your own food. You shouldn't be having nights with your wife. The whole thing about the achievement society is we've internalized, I guess, the boss, but we've externalized the ability to feel praise from all of these things because we constantly have to be looking after fucking achievement. And that's the reason why we essentially get burned out, and why it goes back to that's what is moving people away from being actual men, is the way in which we look at achievement in our society. Okay. And so Han calls this the self-exploitation machine. We are simultaneously the perpetrator and the victim, our own boss and our own jailer. We push ourselves to the brink of exhaustion, not because someone is forcing us to, because we are chasing an elusive dream to self-fulfillment and ultimate authenticity. And feedback plays a dangerous role in this. We live under the tyranny of endless positivity. The slogans of modern work are smiling invitations. Be your best self. Stay positive. Yes, you can. It doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like encouragement. But Han warns that this positivity is a quiet, insidious rule. Okay, or a quiet and insidious rule. It demands that there is no slowing down, no showing off cracks, no admitting you are tired. It is exhausting to constantly perform happiness and productivity, and that pulls us away from nature, and it also pulls us away from Godhead or Godhood or enlightenment. In our transparency society, we are pressured to bare our entire souls, our private thoughts, our vulnerabilities, our struggles, and turn them into what Han calls exhibition value. We put our deepest personal feelings on display, and then we judge our worth based on external metrics, how many likes we have, performance scores, KPIs, 30, 60, 90-day evaluations. It is constantly a push to make us consistently always better and better and better. So we are forcing ourselves to always be working. And this is where the toxic phrase comes in. I'm just not good enough. Under this hyper capitalist model of perpetual optimization, you can never actually achieve good enough, because the moment you hit a goal, the finish line is immediately moved and you are trapped in a feedback loop that constantly tells you that you must do more, perform more, optimize more, and constantly be leveling up. So how do you break free from this? The answer, as Byung-Chul Han suggests, is finding liberation in the pause. We have to reclaim our ability to simply be. We have to reclaim our ability to disconnect, and we have to reclaim our ability to experience moments of rest and reflection that have absolutely nothing to do with resumes or productivity. We have to set hard boundaries. We must learn to say no to the constant demands of continuous assessment. And that is how we can truly break free from feedback. And that's how we can truly break free from the achievement society, where we are giving ourselves time for the revitalization of us. So when you think about not working, and you think about setting time to watch your favorite show, write about your favorite things, spend time journaling, going outside and working with your hands, planting a garden, watering the grass, building pizza with your wife, or making rice, or learning how to do Korean barbecue, or learning how to do pottery or archery. Those are the things that can take us away from the constant need to be achieving, because that's the world that we have created. And the world of constantly be achieving, it says we can buy someone to do all of this stuff so we can do what? Spend more of our time specifically working. And that makes us never feel like we're good enough. And if you topple that on with feedback, you're never going to feel like you're worth anything. And every time you achieve something, you're never going to be at the end. It has to be more, more, and more. And at the end of the day, capitalism is the reason why that exists. And with that, as I always say, be thankful, grateful, and kind. And we'll talk with you soon. Bye.
Tell me, how does it feel? Tell me, how does it feel? I see the meaning of life in your eyes. It's like swimming in the ocean at night. And when I'm with you, it's like I'm on fire. Nothing is real outside myself and your smile lines bring me down with sweet soft sound. My name, the way it sparkles when it leaves your mouth, fill my soul